Today's series begins with a very mysterious scene. Lewin is sinking into a mysterious space, a place where you are alone. Lewin gradually opened his eyes to the sound of something screaming. A strange system panel appears announcing that you are the reincarnation of Daraka, the destroyer of the world. A giant god appeared before him. His red eyes radiate terrifying power. Lewin was bewildered, not understanding what was going on. The giant god suddenly said something. Many strange things happened continuously. He wanted to hear clearly what that god was trying to say. Then the scene shifts back to a few hours ago and sees what reason brought Lewin into that space. At the training ground of I Goodnight Academy, Professor Hideo explained the content of the training, that as long as you can defeat the target, you will succeed. Lewin was the next student to perform the lesson. He was very scared and didn't feel confident, even though he only needed to use the most basic magic to defeat the target. Anyone could do it. But for you to be one of those people who have problems using magic and doing it is a very difficult thing. Professor Hideo couldn't wait, so he urged Lewin to start walking. He put all his strength into his arm and the fire appeared like that. He was determined to put all his heart and soul into this time at all costs. The fire grew bigger and bigger. The surrounding students were all surprised at the size of the sphere that Lewin created, and to be able to do that, it required a large amount of mana that few people could possess. Professor Hiden focused on watching. He prepares to release a fireball. His face tightened. It was all over again. Lewin's hands trembled, but he still tried not to give up. My body can't take it anymore. Hugh was immediately called out by Lewin. He wiped his mouth with his hand and hesitantly said, I can't do it. Professor Hiden shouted loudly, quickly release it. He tried his best to answer that I couldn't release it. Professor Hiden immediately reminded Lewin that you're in your final year now. If you can't even do basic magic like fireball, how will you pass your graduation exam? His face turned purple and he blamed himself for being such a waste. Even so, he still refused to give in, clenched his fists and loudly replied to Professor Hiden, I'm sorry, I'll practice more. In this targeting training, students need to create 10 fireballs and hit the target countless times, but our male protagonist can't even cast the spell, let alone hit the target, so it's impossible. Can become a third-rate magician. After witnessing Lewin's inability to do the job, there was a lot of discussion among the students, and they asked many questions about how an incompetent person could be the valedictorian of the entrance exam. Along with that, he was abandoned. It's still better if we just leave, that's truly a disgrace to the students. He's handsome, he studies well, he's the valedictorian of the entrance exam, but he's just an unknown noble, so he's envied by students from prestigious families, but you don't care about us. What made Lewin depressed was the fact that I had no hope from the very beginning, all because of the curse that had followed the male lead for the past 6 years, and this was also the reason why the male lead could not performing magic is a mana disorder. Even though he's been trying to hold back for so many years, the male lead now begins to ask himself, how long can I endure? In the main hall of Ignite Academy, all the students were buzzing and asking each other after the training. Lewin wanders alone but meets the ghosts. Oh, who is that? Isn't Lewin stupid? A villain's laugh. It's time for you to pack up and go back to your hometown. Lewin, if I were human, I'd probably dig a hole and crawl in. You're unbelievably thick-skinned. Two guys with confident faces mocking the male lead with a very sarcastic tone. Do you know what the juniors call you? Stupid Lewin. These two guys still continued to talk, because of the person whose final year class's performance was being dragged down. Why don't you go home immediately and go back to that person's coughing territory? Eyes full of murderous intent, but loot printing still doesn't do anything for them. You can still endure it. The blonde guy refused to let you go and kept saying insulting things. Since you don't have the skills, at least you have assets. After coming here, I learned about the Adeo family. My father also said that. That's just some loudmouthed empty names, that's all. No matter how the blonde guy teases him, he doesn't care, but when he touches his family, he confirms that this is going far and then he turns around, put all his strength into his arm and punched the blonde's beautiful face. The other guy felt like he was sweating bullets when he saw his friend being punched and sent flying dozens of meters away. If you're angry and want to touch me now, I'm sure you won't be able to touch my house anymore. His nose was bleeding continuously, his face was hit by the male lead's punch, but he still refused to give in. You bastard, how dare you? He still calmly advised the blonde shirt, Ben-4, you have to know when to stop. Who are you to dare to cause trouble with my father and family? The rest of the group saw this and shouted loudly, you bastard, don't you know who we are? They took a stance and rushed to punch him. I thought Lewin couldn't counterattack in time. Lewin waved his hand like lightning and punched straight in his chest. His legs buckled. Lewin stood proudly looking down at the huge damage that made him clutch his chest. The person was shaking, his mouth was foaming, there was no sign of resistance coming from this guy. Then a loud voice shouted behind the male lead's back. He suddenly discovered. Lewin turned around and saw that the blonde hair had accumulated a large amount of electricity. He still did not give in, but even shouted loudly, "Who dares to hit me?" The blonde-haired man unleashed a massive electric charge straight at the male lead, regardless of the fact that he could be expelled from school. An electric charge towards Lewin. Go to hell. His body couldn't move. In the distance, Professor Hayden was running to stop this fight. He shouted loudly, "Will you guys stop?" Before he could finish his sentence, Lewin was hit by the blonde-haired woman's blow. He caught it in time, but the amount of magic was too great. And those are the things you can remember before being taken to this strange space. Lewin was still panicking and didn't understand what was going on. Countless questions were immediately raised. He still didn't know who the giant in front of him was. He immediately mentioned something. Lewin was bewildered when he realized he was calling his name, and so he woke up and returned to reality. He gradually opened his eyes and saw a girl standing in front of Lewin, worriedly calling his name when he saw him starting to wake up. This girl, Helen, is a high-level healer. When she saw Lewin waking up, she immediately asked him if he was awake yet. He was so scared that he had just received a strong electric shock from the blonde and then met the giant god, but now he had woken up in another place. He tried to sit up and ask me where I was. He gently helped him up and replied kindly, "This is a good recovery room, no need to try to get up anymore." He replied that it's okay, a bit dizzy, but I can sit. Lewin put his hand on his head and was still confused, still not understanding everything. He felt like he had just fainted. The moment he met that god he couldn't forget and still didn't know what the hell was going on, but it was very clear and definitely not a dream. He wondered how long it had been since I fainted. She immediately told Lewin that it had been almost a day. She continued to say that she was lucky that it wasn't worse. God help you. Lewin didn't know how to respond, so she asked about my current health situation, whether I was completely healthy now. The girl replied, "We still need to monitor more, but you look very healthy for someone who was just directly struck by lightning with no burn wounds or any damaged internal organs. I have never seen a similar case. Yours, it's obvious. How could the main character die so early, right guys?" Lewin was sweating profusely and still couldn't believe what was happening right now, because thunder is a scary magic that can burn the whole body in an instant, and it can even eat directly. Looking at myself and wondering why my body is still not looking good, Professor Hayden appeared to meet Lewin privately. Ms. Helen immediately understood and told Lewin that the professor has arrived. "Now I will go see the results. If there is any problem, please let me know immediately." When Ms. Helen left, the professor came to ask about Lewin. He also replied that she was fine. Professor Hayden felt happy and lucky for him and informed him of important information, that there was a meeting taking place between professors about this accident. First, Ben 4 will be expelled from school for using powerful magic with the intention of taking his life, spreading false rumors about the truth about the Adeo family, and unfair treatment and bullying. The teacher decides this verdict. After hearing what happened, Lewin didn't feel happy but instead was worried. He immediately stammered in replying to the professor, but he also hit Ben back. The professor said that of course you will also have to receive a punishment considering what happened. You will also be forced to participate in volunteer activities at the academy for a month. Lewin accepted this punishment and did not request it. Anything more? The professor's face suddenly became more serious. "I wanted to ask if you are keeping the treasure. In this world, the treasure is a legendary weapon left behind by an ancient magician with an endless source of mana. This is an extremely rare thing." Lewin was immediately bewildered when he heard the professor's question. He rubbed his head and replied to the professor's question. "I definitely don't have any treasures. If I had something like that, I wouldn't be bullied." The professor put his chin in thought and said, "Anyway, in terms of evaluation and its rarity, the patriarch of the Adeo family must have used it for the family's benefit." Lewin raised her face and asked curiously, "But why did you ask me?" The professor looked straight at Lewin and explained, "I'm sure there was a red light surrounding your body right before the lightning hit. It seemed like a high-level treasure was protecting you, knocking out Ben's magic." Lewin still didn't understand what the professor said and wondered what he was saying. Then he suddenly remembered the dream he had just now. He didn't know if these things were related or not. I confirmed with the professor that even though I didn't understand what happened, I probably didn't tell him to turn it on, and the professor didn't ask any more questions after hearing that. The professor advised Lewin to rest and then turned and left, leaving him with thousands of questions. Even though he told the professor he didn't know what happened, he didn't say anything more. I don't know what the professor is thinking, but there must be something secret that he doesn't want to reveal. Lewin immediately put his chin on his hands and thought about the things he had experienced that were no different from a dream, and that strange voice, the story related to the god from before, and the treasure of the world destroyer Darakae, and the players, and many more things. Lewin sat down and remembered what he had seen in that dream, thinking for a long time that he couldn't remember. Then suddenly he remembered that it was the status window. As soon as he thought about it, it appeared in front of him and he suddenly panicked and said, "What the heck?" Helen saw that Lewin was in trouble and ran over in panic. She asked Lewin, "Are you okay? Are you feeling unwell?" Lewin was bewildered and kept pointing at the system board, replying, No, did you see it? The green board in front of me. Helen doesn't understand what you're saying. What are you babbling about? Lewin, there's nothing there. Are you sure you're okay? Lewin looked confused and couldn't believe this. Helen really didn't see the status window. The content of the system table says that Lewin is the embodiment of Daraka, the destroyer of the world. As a result of his pursuit of endless power, the magician Daraka perished along with his world. He and Daraka, who from birth have lacked mana and Lewin. Strength is the source of his power. In addition, the system table also shows Daraka's treasures. Can open the status window and can increase strength infinitely by completing quests with strength index 150, agility 100, wisdom 1, 550. Instead of telling him, he chose to avoid it. Then he shyly replied that it was nothing. I was a bit confused. Helen smiled awkwardly and replied, "It's not funny." Then she told him that the test results were completely normal and he could return to the dormitory. He happily replied, "Yes, thank you. You are the incarnation of Dara, aka the destroyer of the world. What is this? What is happening?" At night, Lewin still sits and thinks about today's events. Is he still alive after eating lightning? The embodiment of Daraka, the destroyer of the world, the giant god with red eyes in another space and the window. Status. Time gradually passed, and after a while of thinking, he decided to face it. Lewin calls out the system table. The bulletin board displays that Lewin has become a player affiliated with Dara, aka the destroyer of the world, and he needs to train his body to prepare for the power advancement process, which is the task of punching and kicking. Spinning kicks. Each task requires 100 attempts. In addition, the system also gives a bonus of 10 powers and unlocks new skills. Lewin thinks punching and kicking increases physical strength, but how can one become a mage? A mage already plays close combat, guys. Without thinking, he took a deep breath. Use all your strength to swing your right hand and punch straight in front of the 1 in 100 notification system board. Then continue to swing his left hand and punch straight forward. The system board continued to display 2 out of 100. Lewin is happy to see that it is increasing at this rate and will be completed soon. This time, a problem appeared after punching the notification panel and it did not increase. He secretly thought that the system would not consider it completed if he did not swing his hand hard enough. Understanding the problem this time, he was determined to complete the task. The night passes with time. I don't know how long after, Lewin's body was drenched in sweat and panting tiredly, hands resting on knees tiredly, speaking without a sound. Lewin smiled when completing the task. The notice board displayed a reward plus 10 unlocked skill powers. He immediately wondered what the reward he would receive would be. Lewin suddenly noticed a strange phenomenon occurring in her body. Lewin looked at his body as if something was gently running through his veins. It was something more basic than mana. As you guys don't know, in order to be able to use magic, mana is needed. He felt that he was stronger than before. Lewin immediately put all his strength into swinging his punch to test how his strength increased. A powerful blow, stronger than before. If this keeps up, I'll probably punch all the villains. He happily felt that the power was actually stronger than the speed of air resistance, and the destructive power had all really changed compared to before. The base power had gotten stronger, but he still had a question. What about the skill opening reward? He immediately opened the status window. Passive power circle display system replaces mana with power. Mana circle is replaced with power circle. From now on, all spells are affected by player's power. From now on, all movements are influenced by power. Lewin was dumbfounded and replaced the mana ring with the force ring. He placed his hand on his heart, feeling and thinking that it meant his mana would be replaced by power. A simpler explanation is that even though everyone has a mana circle surrounding their heart, the mana circle plays a big role in the process of releasing and enhancing mana, increasing its stats depending on the direction, length and amount of mana the mage can control. Lewin closed his eyes to feel that there were 4 more mana circles than other children his age, but because of their own shortcomings, they became useless. Then he suddenly realized something had changed. The mana circle has truly disappeared, so the powerful circle that is spinning widely in its place must be the force circle. Lewin's surprise and worry were evident when he realized the magic circle that replaces the mana circle cannot be magic without the mana circle. If this new circle cannot do what the mana circle can do, then what will happen to you? Are you worried that your life as a magician will end like this? Our Lewin is someone who can't give up so easily, so he immediately started trying to see the effects of the power circle. The fireball move that he had never been able to complete before, a fireball gradually appeared. The speed at which it appeared was strangely fast, surprising even him. Not only is it faster, it's also stronger than before. Bright flames flickered around as the speed and power of the fireball was seen. Lewin also realized that this was the time he changed his life's destiny. All magic has a basic activation mechanism, so before it can release its power, it takes 10 seconds to recharge. Currently, with the power circle, Lewin was able to go through that 10-second mechanism and create fireballs with the power in his body. It can be simply said that the greater the body's power, the more magic created. The magic he created only lasted for a moment. It felt like something was missing. Lewin was surprised to see the system board slowly appearing without him calling out. The system board reports a new skill called Mad Mage. Lewin can now focus magic energy into his body to attack enemies, and when casting magic, power-enhancing effects will be added. Making a magic attack will deal additional physical damage. Lewin still can't figure out how it works and is very curious about the character Daraka because like him they both have a mana disorder curse, and instead of using magic, he does this guy fight by focusing his magic energy into his fists and feet. And he was even more surprised and wondered how he could create this method. The system board announces a new mission. Practice using the Magician's Madness skill, which is to use the circle of force and strength to attack the target. The strength bonus is added with 10 stats. The target to attack is the scarecrow in front of you. Lewin is still thinking about this method because this is a completely new skill he has never encountered before, and whether it will help him become a magician when followed or not, and that will be the result of the future. Hybrid. Now Lewin can only know by trying. He put strength into his arm, channeled power into the fireball, and made a powerful fist at the scarecrow. It immediately exploded into flying pieces. A bright smile appeared on his lips when Lewin was able to use it thoroughly and defeat the target. Mission completion notification system with strength index +10. After a period of training, the male lead's body could no longer exercise. Lewin completed his task. He fell to the ground, his body exhausted and his whole body relaxed. He thought back to his previous failed attempts to release magic, but now succeeded using his fists. More and more curious about Daraka Lewin, he wanted to learn more about this character. His body felt heavy and he fell asleep without realizing it. There was a lot of chatter when seeing Lewin sleeping outside in the practice yard, mainly curiosity about why he was lying here and the fact that he was still alive after eating a lightning bolt. Lewin woke up from the surrounding noises. Everyone was screaming, "Oh my God, you're awake, you're scaring us to death." Lewin sat up and stretched his body, then answered the people around him, "What's going on? Why are you all gathered here? Is this the first time I've seen someone sleeping outside?" The people around responded, "Nothing else. It's not strange that a noble doesn't care about the dormitory, the warm blankets and soft mattresses, but lies here like this." He didn't want to explain any more, just said he was tired so he should sleep, then said goodbye to everyone and returned to the dormitory. Everyone was bewildered, some even thought that Lewin was like another person. Suddenly a young man noticed the scarecrows. Everyone was surprised to see that the scarecrow had been beaten until all that was left was the stake. Everyone did not believe that it was made by Lewin. Believe it or not, Lewin will shine in the future. I have to keep my mouth open, so wait for the day when Lewin gets stronger. At the academy dormitory, seeing Lewin return to his room after one night, his roommate, Cha-Sun, was surprised. Sun's father asked him while brushing his teeth, "Were you staying out all night?" He was worried and kept asking Lewin what was going on. Normally, it's not often he leaves the academy for so long. Let me tell you a little more information about Father Sun. Father Sun is my son. The eldest son of the Damon family is famous for mining minerals, but his father still treats Lewin kindly. Father Sun didn't see Lewin's answer, so he teased Lewin to not tell me you were going to see her. This guy continues to tease that guy. Could it be that after being hit, you finally know how to enjoy it? Then quickly tell me what you did last night. Lewin threw the jacket at Dad. Sun replied that the moon was talking nonsense. I'm going to take a bath. There's nothing better than soaking in a hot tub. Even though he's resting, Lewin still checks the tasks. The system board announces the task of training your body to increase your strength. Punch 100 times, kick 200 times, spin 200 times, and the reward for the task is +10 strength stats. Lewin realized the reward remained the same, but the requirements were doubled. He gradually sank into the water, enjoying the thought of not knowing if it would double in the future or not, but he was certain that this wouldn't be easy. Lewin sank completely into the water and thought about his future, not knowing what to expect. Time gradually passed for a month. Lewin constantly tried to complete the mission. Because the repeatable quest can be done at most once a day, the reward remains the same, but the requirements increase. And if the task is not completed that day, all progress will return to 0 the next day. So Lewin didn't miss that mission for a single day. Maybe the good thing is that the mission's requirements don't increase more than 3,000 times. If we increase it any more, our house will probably die while doing the mission. Lewin is trying to complete the task of performing a leg swing, kicking straight into the air with an extremely powerful leg swing, and this is the final part of the task. The system announces the completion of the goal of punching 3,000 times, kicking 3,000 times, spinning kick 3,000 times, reward plus 10 strength index. This is Lewin's result after a month of trying. And Lewin gained a new skill. He was so excited that he didn't know what it was. Body art skill display system. The body gets stronger based on practice. The more you practice, the stronger you get. I don't know how strong Lewin is now, but definitely Lewin is now much stronger than before thanks to the continuous training process. Morning at the academy. Sleeping day and night flying is Lewin's current situation with the increasing intensity of training, causing even a studious person like Lewin to fall asleep right in class, surprising everyone around him. Everyone was talking about how Lewin practiced hard alone but only practiced kicking his legs and swinging his arms. Everyone thought he was strange and looked down on him. During the past month, not only did I practice hard, Lewin also looks for clues about the character Daraka. You can't find anyone named Daraka in the records. Searched a lot of information and things about the World Destroyer player status window but didn't have any clue. Who is Daraka and who can give Lewin such power? Lewin immediately checked his current stats. Strength 470, agility 100, wisdom 1550, strength index has increased a lot compared to last time. While checking, father-son from afar called Lewin back. You don't know why he called you. He immediately said that he probably didn't know, that's why he leisurely read the book like this. Lewin was confused and asked if something serious was going on. Father-son announced a shocking news that the owner of Adu is here. Lewin was shocked to hear that his father was coming here. He quickly ran to his father. Lewin ran from afar calling for his father. Lewin's father was standing and talking with Professor Hideo when he heard his son calling. The happy face shouted loudly, "Lewin, my son is here." Father and son sat down and talked to each other after not seeing each other for a long time. Lewin asked about his father in the past 6 years. "Since I turned 10 and entered this academy, have you been doing well?" He replied that I'm fine. Lewin asked about his sister, "What about Luyene?" He smiled and replied, "My sister, she's grown up now and is still practicing swordsmanship and trying to protect his brother." Lewin smiled shyly and replied, "Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed." Father and son discussed the main issue directly. "Tell me seriously that I'm living very well, sir." He didn't understand anything, but Lewin continued to say that he was really fine, not injured physically or mentally. He was probably thinking that his father knew about the difficult things Lewin had recently encountered, so say so. Lewin's father drank a cup of tea and thought for a while and then told him, "This Lewin, actually the reason I stopped by the academy was to ask your opinion about leaving this academy. If you find it too difficult, you can always return to your territory if you want. I know you have to deal with it. Faced with many difficulties that you didn't say, right?" Lewin immediately said what he thought. "Actually, I can guess why you came here, but father, I think I've found a way, sir." Lewin promised his father that he would get a good score on the practice test next time. He confidently affirmed that if he couldn't do it, he would do what his father wanted. And then this day came the exam that Lewin was looking forward to so he could express himself. The teacher shouted loudly for the whole class to pay attention. The teacher announced to the class that today was the day of the introductory magic exam, to note that any cheating would result in the exam being failed. Lewin started working when he heard the teacher announce the start of the lesson. This exam will consist of 2 parts, written exam and practical exam. The practical exam will consist of 4 parts, determining the target, measuring actual counter magic and one-on-one combat. Although Lewin is a mana-disordered person, he still tries his best in the theoretical part and he has always achieved perfect scores in the written exam for the past 6 years, and in the practical exam, there is a student named Mi, the Ku of the prestigious Gorafin family is always at the top. But this time Lewin is different from last time. This time he was determined to get first place in this exam. After the written exams were finished, everyone gathered to discuss the next exam. Lewin heard his father calling. Father-son asked him lately, "He's a bit strange, do you have any plans for today's practice?" Lewin said that he would do it in a new way. Father-son was happy to see that his friend had a way to overcome it. They both turned to look when someone was calling Lewin's name. Emiku walked over confidently and encouraged General Lewin to smile contemptuously and say, "Don't say you're planning to use that body for a practical exam, it's useless with your mana disorder." The present Lewin is different from before. He confidently answered, "It's true that I came here to take the exam." Emiku patted Lewin's shoulder and then with a provocative tone, "As a typical student, if I had to give advice to someone like you who failed the practice test 6 times, He gave me a half smile and I'll say, instead of coming here to humiliate yourself, why don't you just give up now? Lewin right now is not the type to confidently reply to anyone who knows. I don't think your advice is useful, either. He despised you saying you think someone with Mana disorder syndrome will actually be able to do the test. However, Emiko was very angry because instead of seeing Lewin's disappointment, this time Lewin was full of confidence. He couldn't bear to lose. He immediately scheduled a match in part 1 and won, and unexpectedly this is a very wrong decision by Emiko. Come to the practical test, and the first test is target identification. The official name is the multi-target shooting test. The rules are very simple. Students just need to shoot down multiple targets in one shot. The more you kill, the higher your score will be. However, this year's exam is different from last year in that the difficulty will increase. Instead of the target standing still, it will continuously move, making it more difficult to defeat. The students took turns performing the test. Only 1 or 2 targets were defeated. Because this test was more difficult, the average score was terribly low. The teachers in the stands felt disappointed with the quality of this year's students. Just increasing the difficulty a little, but the results were already so bad. Some of them still confidently believe that it is a bit early to be disappointed now. Professor Irit is a professor of magic potion preparation and Emiko's uncle, confident that Emiko's turn is coming soon. Mike slowly walked to his exam area. He raised his hands and gathered mana to summon a blue fireball. Although he was a bit bold in provoking our Lewin, he had enough grounds because for no reason he was always at the top of the practice section. A brilliant blue ball in the palm of his hand of sparks. Little green sparkles fly out around. The referee shouted loudly, "Start, Mike." He then launched magic towards the target. Many targets were taken down one after another. Every student who witnessed it was surprised and thought that this time he would come out on top again. Professor Irit clapped his hands with joy and shouted loudly, "No wonder he was a descendant of the Go-I-Fin family, right?" He smiled confidently and said that at this point, Mike is truly the pride of our academy and he will definitely be the representative of this year's banquet. Someone powerful enough to stop Professor Irit's flow of speech. That was the principal of Trion, the 7th level Archmage. He thought he didn't need to see any more because he probably already recognized Emiko's talent. Professor Hideo immediately stopped and said that it was Lewin's turn soon. The principal was surprised that it was Lewin. Is that kid still at the academy? Just because of his enthusiasm, sit back and watch for a moment. Lewin prepares for his exam. This time Lewin is very confident unlike during training, and this is also a good opportunity for Lewin to test his strength. The referee announced the start of the competition with his face full of concentration. The fire began to appear gradually. Lewin gathered the power of a great fire to surround him. All the professors gasped when they saw Lewin's rapid magic execution. All the students were surprised to see that. But Emiko still despises that Lewin is a mana-disturbed person, and no matter how hard he tries, Lewin cannot release it and hit the target. Before he could finish his sentence, Lewin below in just a moment moved as fast as lightning. Lewin uses the time refraction skill to increase the speed index by 200% of the power, making body movements faster. He immediately rushed towards the target at an unbelievable speed. With this skill, Lewin can move quickly to any place he wants. In a short period of time, the targets were continuously defeated by him with his fire fists. Fragments of the targets flew away. Lewin landed from above with enormous force from the impact, causing the ground to shake violently, surrounded by the aura of fire creating deep cracks. All the teachers, including the principal, were stunned by Lewin's power. All the students stood speechless at the scene before their eyes. Lewin smiled with satisfaction when completing the exam. The targets were left with only small fragments flying all around. The referee trembled and mumbled the announcement of Lewin 217 goals. Everyone was surprised by the rumors and everyone who didn't believe it was true, but was Lewin casting magic on his hand and then hitting the target right away, using magic. The sound of applause came from the principal. The principal stood up and applauded Lewin and acknowledged that it was an excellent exam. Some students still couldn't accept it, but among them there was still a large number of people cheering for Lewin. Emiko gritted his teeth angrily, not believing how Lewin could do that. The cheers and cheers became more and more loud every day. Lewin was very happy to be praised and recognized by everyone, something he had not experienced in the past 6 years. This is also a worthy achievement as well as always trying not to give up. Lewin confidently raised his face and happily looked at everyone cheering for him. This is the feeling he always wanted. At the teachers' conference room, until now, Professor Irit still does not accept Lewin's results because he hit the target directly. Professor Hideo defended Lewin, explaining that magic has no limits. This is a field where anything can happen. The teacher seriously continued to say that if everything happened according to the framework, it would no longer be magic but mathematics. Professor Irit still persisted, but the principal stopped him and said, Today I witnessed a practitioner create a miracle, and it was a miracle of magic. However, there are still some professors who have disagreements on this matter. Among them, the most bitter person is still Professor Irit, who still can't believe that everything turned out like that. Turning back to Lewin, his friend Cha-sun ran over, put his arm around his shoulder, and shouted loudly, "Hey, the ultimate magician is here." Lewin shyly stopped his friend. When everyone around heard Lewin's name, they immediately ran to talk to him, and everyone wanted to get close to him. Lewin couldn't get used to it when everyone kept huddled around him, so he quickly ran back to his room. Just yesterday I was an anonymous kid in school, but in just one moment everything changed completely, so Lewin still couldn't adapt, but there are still a lot of people who don't like it very much. When I entered the room, Mike was already waiting there. Lewin immediately asked, "What are you doing in someone else's dorm room, Emiko?" Emiko immediately walked up to Lewin and with a disdainful tone scored a few points with something that wasn't magic. "That you raised your head to the sky and your arrogance made me sick, so I came here to reminding you not to be arrogant," Lewin replied. "Isn't it because you feel humiliated when you lose to someone you despise?" He angrily grabbed his collar. Lewin held Mike's hand tightly. The terrible force of his arm made Mike panic. He frowned, not expecting Lewin to be so strong. Lewin remained calm. "You don't want this to affect your graduation. If you want to settle your grievances, wait until the first exam and then have a fair match." After speaking, he let go of his hand. "Mike still despises you for thinking you're qualified enough to compete with me. Why are you such a failure?" Lewin replied, "Just wait and you will know whether I am qualified or not." He challenges Lewin, "Pass the next test." Emiko still thinks he won't fail the next test, let alone the combat test. But that feeling is still unforgettable. His hands were still shaking until now. He wondered if it was magic. The second test day has also arrived at a majestic giant statue, and it will be related to the content of the second test measuring mana performance. That statue is the Academy's treasure, one of the rare treasures of the ancient Kinram goblin. 500 years ago, the great magician Foryu turned the Kinram goblin into a treasure while still alive. The ram trapped in this treasure absorbs mana and is considered a magical sandbag, and this test requires the student to cast magic on the ram to get points. Lewin immediately worked with his father to find a way to pass this test. But the difficulty of this exam won't be easy because that goblin is famous for giving difficult marks. Above 20 is good. A student immediately performed the test and released a large amount of purple lightning to attack the statue. Kinram said, "Restudy that 1 point, you magician, there's still time to skip class." He stood there, unable to believe the results he received. He immediately left disappointed when a female student confidently walked to his exam area. "If you're so confident like that, it's easy to get lost, guys." She started casting magic. A large amount of ice flew towards the statue. Kinram says, "I will definitely not forget you. That's impressive." Before she could be happy, the truth slapped her. He was right. This is the first time I've seen anyone perform trash magic like this. 2 points. The girl cried when she thought she had done the best she could, but the truth was still the same. After that, all that remained were the criticisms of the scriptures and the curses of the students. The referee reminded the students not to scream anymore, then announced that the next person, the Emiko, would participate in the competition. Emiko confidently prepares for the exam. He put all his strength into releasing what he had. The ice magic attacks flew straight towards the statue, but it didn't seem to be too bad. Kinram immediately said, "I'm a bit disappointed. Are you the son of Chan Ghi Fin?" Emiko confidently and boastfully replied that I was the third son of the proud Koryai Fin. The statue then laughed loudly and said proudly that your father is a crybaby idiot who begged me to give him points. "Mike, you are much worse than your stupid father by 27 points. He angrily shouted and cursed back. The referee stopped Emiko and invited the next student, none other than Lewin. Unlike this one-time test, Lewin was a bit more nervous because this was the first time he took this test. Lewin comforted and encouraged himself and then put strength into his arm. The fire kept appearing. "This guy is not like the other guys," he greeted and introduced himself fully. Kinram was surprised because this was the first time seeing Lewin and asked Lewin to take the test. The fire grew bigger and bigger. The surrounding students realized that it was explosive fire energy, a type of 4th level magic. Everyone was surprised that Lewin could create such a thing. Surprising statue of Lewin's preparatory pose. Before I could wonder, Lewin rushed over as fast as lightning. He didn't have to rush to punch again, but this time he transferred the power from his hands to his feet. The fire covered his legs. He rushed forward and put the force of his legs in. There was a loud bang as he swung his leg and kicked the statue. The referee watched with his mouth open and he couldn't believe what had just happened before his eyes. How could this be possible? Every student in the stands was surprised by surprise when the magician unleashed a level 4 spell, but the energy of that attack was at least level 5. Everyone assumed that Lewin was at least a level 5 mage. Meanwhile, Luin was still wondering why the fire blast skill was deployed correctly but why the statue's reaction was so strange. He stood facing the statue thinking about whether he had made a mistake in any step. Suddenly the statue changed its attitude and asked if he was a Dara. Luin was surprised to hear about the name Dara. The statue's face glowed red with the angry face. I've been waiting for you, Dara. When students hear the name Dara, they don't know who that person is or whether they mistake Luin for someone else. Luin has been searching for related documents for the past few months but still hasn't found any trace of the Dara, but Luin didn't expect that this statue could know. He immediately asked him if he knew about Dara. The statue replied loudly and clearly that he knew. Luin wanted to know more about Dara and begged the statue to tell more about Dara. Kinram pondered for a moment. He was very interested in this, but I didn't expect that I would meet his reincarnation at this academy. What is his name? He immediately replied that the statue was Luin. After listening, the statue replied, Luin, I will remember, but there are too many people here, I will tell you later. The referee immediately called the statue and asked if he could tell me how many points Luin scored before leaving. The statue said that the evaluation ended here. This magic is not something I can evaluate. The referee suddenly replied, what are you talking about? He immediately mentioned the school's principles and the contract that must be followed. Kinram shouted angrily, enough, you mentioned the principle in front of me. All these years I've been the one who had to judge these kids as not being anything like magicians. The referee was sweating and kept apologizing, but because of the contract, he would still tell Luin's score. The statue looked towards Luin. One was not two. 100 people wanted what the little destroyer wanted. Luin was a bit surprised. He just smiled and replied, of course, 100 points. After the test, everyone talked about Luin's story and everyone was surprised that the statue gave a legendary scorer like him 100 points. Professor Hideo found Luin to discuss the matter. He immediately informed that the story of Luin receiving 100 points from Kinram had already reached the principal's ears and decided to reward Luin. The professor gave Luin the scroll. Luin opened the contents related to the treasure room. He immediately asked the professor. He didn't explain anything further, just told Luin to follow him. Both teacher and student entered a strange place. Luin happily said that he didn't know there was a place like this here. The professor said that this place was the only place in the academy that was forbidden to enter. Luin still doesn't understand why the professor led me to this place. Walking to the front of a mysterious room, the professor told him, this is the path to the treasure room, I can only go here. Luin panicked, so I have to go in alone. After the professor confirmed that he had to go in alone, he slowly opened the door and went in. Although he didn't know what was going on, this was a reward so he could go in and see. Inside is a large room with many kinds of treasures. Luin looked around to see all kinds of treasures he had never seen before. A familiar voice rang out, looking so lost. Luin looked around. That voice continued to resound as if you didn't realize your true value. He suddenly realized that it was Sutaram. Why was he here? And it's even more strange that he's no longer a stone statue. Seeing Luin looking confused, Kinram immediately said, surprised, I'm no longer a stone statue. This is the only place I'm allowed to use this body because thanks to the ancient mana that filled this room, I can exist in its original body and is no longer a treasure. Luin wondered, what do you mean when you say I don't know my true worth? He smiled sarcastically and replied with a human face that completely did not know what his true value was, even the magic weapon you are using is similar to a Dara. He was surprised to hear him mention the magic weapon. Kinram then explains how you got this rare treasure in the world and what relationship do you have with Dara. Who should I ask? Instead of asking Luin, it's better to ask my own than not to get an answer. Luin also asked the opposite about who the Daraka character is. The helpless 3-point scripture had to explain to him. Dara is an entity that wants to become a god. One day he visited the Zenith tribe where I lived. At that time he was small and short, but his power is so extraordinary that no one in the Zenith clan can respond, and most especially, with each passing day, he becomes stronger, so even if they attack at the same time, they cannot defeat him. Defeat you? Everyone respected him and he lived with us as a member of the tribe. It was you who taught me language and magic for nearly 100 years. When I heard this, Luin was very surprised. How can humans live for 100 years? Kinram replied, maybe because Day is not human. His true identity is the black dragon Dara. Luin couldn't believe it when he learned the truth that dragons exist, so he absent-mindedly asked, is it true? Kinram replied, don't you know that dragons are the source of magic? He had heard about it before but it was just an empty assertion and everything was just a legend. Kinram also added that, however, Dara cannot use magic. That's also the reason that day when we created a fighting style by using magic on our hands and feet. Do you understand what that means? Lewin sympathizes with Dara aka's situation because he is the same and he also understands a little. Kinram continued to tell that Dara aka created an ability that only he could use, a way to turn magic into power like what other people did. Mastering that power, Dara aka had become the strongest entity in the world. However, he was still not satisfied with that and continued to expand his power to infinity, eventually destroying everything including himself. Lewin could not imagine how powerful the radar could be and could destroy the whole world. The system board shows that a trace achievement has been achieved. The rewards include the title of Goblin Comrades, new skills, Raging Goblins, and Tapping Embodied Spirits of Power. The Goblin Companion title helps increase the friendliness of the goblins and helps people communicate with the goblins, although it doesn't have much use, but it's better than nothing. He checked the new skill Goblin's Rage, the skill that allows him to borrow power from Goblin's Rage to increase his power and can reach 300 in 30 seconds. In addition, it can also gradually increase under the influence of Goblin Rage. Use of physical skills. I thought about researching this skill, and the final reward appears in Lewin's hand, but its use is still unknown. Seeing Lewin keep looking into space and talking to himself, Kinram realized that he had just received a mission reward because he had also seen Dara aka do that often before. He immediately gave the last reward to Kinram to see if he knew about this. He immediately realized that it was a page. The scriptures tell you that it is not a thing but an incarnation. Lewin still doesn't understand what this is. He also said that he is always next to Daraka but is currently sealed by Daraka in this miscellaneous stone. He is an embodiment of power. Although he is called a spirit, he is completely different from normal spirits. He is always hot-tempered and asks Dara aka to give him unlimited power every day, but if satisfying him will also give you unlimited power. The stone in Lewin's hand began to show cracks. The more cracks the stone gradually breaks. Lewin looked at what was in his hand. Is a very cute little bear. Lewin was surprised to see that this bear could talk, so he asked why the bear could talk. The little bear was angry and shouted loudly, "Don't look at me like a bear anymore, kid." Lewin still has the same question, why can bears talk? The bear angrily argued that you dare compare me to those things that are not bears. It introduces that we are an incarnation, whatever we want to become is that thing. Watch here, I will show you my strength, confident bear. Lewin is also looking forward to watching. But it's so strange inside that I keep pushing and still nothing happens. What is the bear panicking? Where is my strength? Lewin doesn't understand what he is trying to do. The bear immediately made an excuse that it was because I was reincarnated with an empty stomach to give him food. Even though he calls Lewin his master, he always complains and demands everything from Lewin. Then the bear fell asleep and he didn't understand anything. Kinram saw Lewin and touched the page like that. Reminds him of the past. Remembering the days of confronting Daetrang and Dara aka when I was still in the Zenith clan. Returning to the present, he wondered what Lewin would do when he shouldered Daraka's wishes. He still didn't understand the question. Kinra commented that the power you hold will make people stronger, it can lead people to the right path and can also swallow you. I ask again, what will you do once you become stronger? The reason Lewin wants this power is to protect his relatives from monsters and honor his family name. Is to prove yourself to those who dare to look down on you. You have so much to protect, you can't let this opportunity slip away. Lewin replied clearly that I will live according to what I want for my family and myself. Kinram admired that answer and looked forward to his future. After that meeting, Lewin learned more about Dara aka and each day that passed still started with the tasks. The only change was having to raise more leopards. Lewin called Daetrang to wake up. Are you going to stop eating or something? Hearing about feeding him, his face lit up with joy. Trang jumped quickly from her feet to her arms and then onto Lewin's shoulders. It opened its mouth and waited, so he gathered his strength to create a huge fire. Daetrang took a breath and absorbed all the fire he created. Both hands patted her full stomach and touched Trang felt very comfortable after eating. The food that Trang wanted was the power she got from doing the task. Speaking out rather than touching Trang would lose power. Print. The system panel displays information about a unique elemental star that responds to the primordial nature of power. Power is proportional to the container. The larger the container, the higher the power. This means if Lewin the stronger it is, the stronger the touch page. Touching the page will be very useful for increasing strength. In addition, there is also a special skill that is Companion Lewin, which will be shared a percentage based on the level of growth of the touch page, and this skill will give you 100 power points equivalent to 1 star. Daetrang said that before being sealed, there were more than 31 stars whose basic properties were only 3,100 points, and their strength far exceeded Lewin's while he had not yet reached 1,000 points. Lewin was surprised how Daraka could gain so many power points. He immediately asked Daraka if there was any other way to increase his power besides missions. Daetrang smiled complacently. Now he understands my value. If you want to know, give me a glass of water. Wanted to play the upper hand with Lewin, but he immediately threatened to not tell me that he would starve, so don't blame him. When Trang felt scared, he had to tell him, there are many ways to increase your power, such as doing missions at high difficulty to receive better rewards. In addition, you can also forge items that increase strength or find treasures, or you can also cook goblin tendons to make pills. But those things are currently not possible at Lewin, because your current strength index must reach at least 1000 to be able to do those things. The page also said that the speed of increasing your strength too quickly will make your body unable to withstand it. Just at the baby learning stage, you think you've gotten a lot stronger, but that's just the initial stage. The next goal is to reach 1000 points of strength. Lewin practices every day to increase his strength. His current strength index is 930. The day of the third competition has also come. To the third competition, which is the actual combat. Trang asked Lewin if you had a competitive exam today. He confidently answered yes, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. In this test, mags will normally stand and attack from behind, so there is a possibility that spells will hit allies during chaos. This test is intended to test the risk management skills of mags. Is the most important part. If you still don't understand, then watch the sacred comedy Cha-Sun made for you guys to see how he uses his magic. But its path was very strange. It flew towards its allies, surprising everyone. For the safety of our allies, there is an unmistakable verdict. My father and I are eliminated. In order to ensure the safety of students as well as evaluate the coordination ability of both sides, a team of Furen Knights was present. The exam will last for 10 days based on the score achieved. Each person will fight against different monsters, and on the last day there will be a total of 13 highest scoring students on the board. On the last day, everyone was very curious about what kind of monster would appear. A strong and powerful roar shook the area. A sea monster slowly appeared. Sea monsters live in groups scattered across the continent. They are many times larger than humans. Their intelligence is not inferior to their violent nature, so wars often occur between sea monsters and humans. The students were all scared and worried, asking the teacher if he was sure this exam would be okay. What if someone died from a sea monster? Professor Hideo advised and supported the students' faith. So the battle began. A fierce sea monster approached. It punched hard at the shields of the knights in front and was difficult to overcome. While Emiku was accumulating magic, the sea monster noticed it. Emiku then unleashed his ice spear. It immediately jumped up and dodged all the attacks, then jumped forward and put all his strength into his arms to attack the knights in front who couldn't act in time. Professor Hideo immediately shouted Mike to get away, because I was so scared that my body couldn't move. He immediately used the forest prison magic. Tree trunks grew from the ground surrounding the body of the sea monster. By the time he realized it, it was too late. The sea monster's body was held tightly and could no longer move. Mike was extremely frightened. His face turned pale and he was officially eliminated. Up in the stands, Professor Irit angrily punched his chair on the chair. He was both angry and disappointed when he failed again in this round. Because Irit was dissatisfied with Lewin last time, he suddenly decided to make things difficult for him, so he immediately asked the principal whether he should continue the exam or not. The principal still doesn't understand what Irit means. Professor Irit started playing tricks. He said that Lewin was the only one who received a perfect score from Kinram, so it wouldn't be fair to judge other students like Lewin, right? The principal found it reasonable, but there were no other monsters. Professor Irit smiled confidently. We have it, right? The Furen Knights brought the sea monster and they also brought an extremely ferocious goblin with them. Using goblins for exams is extremely dangerous. But Lewin still confidently goes into battle. He was not afraid at all. It seemed like he had prepared in advance. Back before the exam in the academy hallway, Professor Hideo was already waiting for Lewin. He immediately called Lewin. He also realized that the professor was waiting for him. The professor immediately told him that in today's exam, my part would be harder than everyone else's, because the students are placing a lot of expectations on him since the time Kinram gave him a perfect score. Many people think that if he and the other students compete with the same fish, it is unfair, so his test will be more difficult. Lewin was bewildered and didn't understand the problem. The professor said his target wouldn't be a sea monster but a goblin. Lewin and Trang stood still for 5 seconds when the next target was a goblin. Trang is looking forward to seeing what Lewin can do to defeat the goblins. The chains made squeaking sounds as the goblin used its terrible power. A terrifying roar echoed throughout the space. Father Sun was above the stands when he saw the overwhelming power of the goblins. I'm extremely worried about Lewin. The great strength made the knights afraid. Everyone regretted giving the suggestion to Lewin to fight the goblins. No one believes that a student can fight against goblins, because compared to sea monsters, they are many times stronger. They can break a person's skull and spine in just one swing. The knight confirmed with the professor whether he was sure or not. Even the knight would find it difficult to catch them. Hideo did not hesitate to confirm that it was the principal's instructions. The knight turned around and looked at the professor in bewilderment. He must have bet his life on this exam, right? Lewin slowly walked into his exam area. The knight was surprised to see him. He introduced himself and said he was a contestant. The knight couldn't believe his eyes. How could this boy fight against the goblin? I was surprised to see him walking forward. I'm calling you back. You're going the wrong way. What are you doing? Lewin calmly replied that I was preparing for the test. The knight thought he was standing in the wrong position. Lewin's face is full of confidence that I will stand here. The knight reminded him that if you stood there, we wouldn't be able to cover you. It wouldn't be as easy to deal with as a sea monster. He still confidently replied, yes I know. The knight couldn't understand and thought he was playing with his life. Lewin took off his outer jacket. The knight looked at him silently. I don't see you scared at all. Professor Hideo reminded Lewin to get ready for the exam. When the exam started, he immediately snapped his fingers to signal. The goblin's shackles were released. It roared loudly and ran quickly towards the knight and Lewin. He also did not give up and used his strength to create momentum to rush forward in the shock of the knights. Shouted the knight, what are you doing? I can't believe you dare to confront the goblin head-on. He shouted loudly to stop Lewin, but it was too slow. The goblin shouted loudly, pulling his hand back and using all his force to punch forward. Lewin rushes forward at a terrifying speed. He poured magic power into his arm and punched straight forward. The powerful punch of the two colliding together created a loud bang. The power created is so great that it spreads all around. The knights did not expect that there would be a magician who dared to use magic like Lewin. Professor Hideo also felt great power. Even the student stands were affected. Professor Irit and the principal couldn't believe their eyes. There's only smoke and dust all around. I don't know if Lewin is okay. In the smoke he gradually appeared. Everyone was surprised that he was still standing. Professor Hideo seemed very proud of Lewin and believed he could do it. The knight ran up and grabbed Lewin's shoulder and shouted loudly, I almost made a mistake. He immediately apologized, but he said that if he had told me in advance, would he have let me barge in? I was surprised by your answer. There's no time left to talk. The goblin appeared from the dust and looked angrier and more violent. I told him to step back and let me take care of this. Lewin didn't follow, but he still stepped forward, face full of confidence without a hint of fear. Lewin said, let me finish my exam. Thanks to the title of Goblin Comrade, he can understand and communicate with goblins. The goblin shouted loudly, I will have someone build a mat. The system board displays an emergency mission with the goal of attacking and destroying the enemy in front of you, with the reward of a strength index of +30 and the possession of a spectacular new skill. This makes Lewin more determined than ever because every day he has to repeat the boring task over and over again, and this task also gives him an index equal to 3 days combined. Lewin rushes forward at a terrifying speed. He poured magic power into his arm and punched straight forward. The powerful punch of the two colliding together created a loud bang. The goblin was surprised at Lewin's power. The force of his punch caused the goblin to be pushed back. The system notifies that the first goal is completed. Prepare to complete the final goal, which is to play the goblin card. The angry goblin grew stronger. It gained momentum and soared forward with both hands clenched, its tense muscles preparing for a powerful punch. Put all your strength into your fist and rush straight towards Lewin. The goblin shouted loudly, I will break your head. A strong punch landed, but Lewin jumped back to avoid the fatal blow. If you want to defeat it, you must find its weakness. Immediately use the time refraction skill. His moving speed was faster. The knight did not expect him to be that fast. He moved at lightning speed towards the goblin. He put strength into his arms, then hit the goblin's stomach hard where he thought it was its weak point. The knight on this trip probably went back to have his eyes checked again because so many unexpected things happened. The whole audience gathered tensely to watch Lewin's battle. The goblin still didn't notice anything after Lewin's punch. It immediately counterattacked. He had no choice but to defend. His right hand and then his left hand punched forward, but he was still able to block it. Lewin immediately used his knees to kick and push its arm away, but his leg was grabbed by the other arm. It threw Lewin and flew forward. His body floats. Lewin quickly turned around and kicked his legs against the wall to use again. Before he could prepare, he had to prepare for the next attack. The goblin rushed forward and punched hard. Lewin quickly kicked the wall and jumped around behind him. He dodged the attack spectacularly. It turned back to look at him indignantly at the lowly humanity. Lewin jumped high. He turned around and gained momentum in the air. A powerful shot struck the monster. The force of the kick caused its body to fall to the floor. He put all his strength into his body and landed his feet extremely hard on the goblin's chest. Lewin activates the Rage Goblin skill that increases power for 30 seconds and then pours power into his fist. The scared goblin said, "Are you really human?" Lewin replied that you probably don't need an answer. he suddenly realized, you can understand what he is saying. Before he could finish his sentence, Lewin put all his strength into his arms. He immediately punched the goblin in the face, adding the goblin's rage effect. Turns into a state of madness. A powerful punch causes the ground vibration test area to deform. The goblin snorted after the punch just now. He looked to see if the goblin was still alive. This result also exceeded our expectations. Lewin was tired after the recent battle. It was quite a tense match. The students immediately cheered and congratulated him. Professor Erit did not expect that Lewin could do it. The principal was very happy when he saw the results. The riders came forward to check on the goblin. The knight asked Lewin who taught him spells and fighting skills. He replied no one. I'm skeptical about Lewin's answer, but with such a confident demeanor, it is definitely true. Lewin asked the professor about his exam results. Mr. Haidu thought for a moment and then answered him. I thought you wouldn't make it, but I didn't even have a chance to stop you. You always exceed my expectations. There is only one result. Lewin passed the exam this time. After so much effort, he passed this exam, which is a completely worthy achievement. Mission notification system rewards plus 30 power stats and unlocks new skills. He was surprised by a new skill that allows players to see through the nature of things. Players can collect and digitize information in addition to unlocking invisibility skills and seeing invisible people. Da Trang said that now Lewin has become a genuine player. He further explained that only players can own it. With this skill, Lewin can see enemies using invisibility, then there will be a blurry border around them. Lewin is thinking of new skills. The system has unlocked the map. This function will allow Lewin to observe everything within a radius of 500 meters around the player's location. The system also informs him that he can view the target's status window depending on the amount of information. The information allowed to be accessed depends on the target's level. Da Trangbao looked at the unconscious goblin and then activated the player's eye. Lewin followed the map using real player skills. He was surprised when he could see the target's state. Lewin immediately checked to see if the professor was wearing a status panel that only provided the professor's name and mage status. Touch page immediately explains that people cannot read information from people who are too much above you. Once you become stronger, the amount of information you can access will increase. Lewin thought for a while and realized the benefits of these skills. After the actual combat test ended, rumors about Lewin defeating the goblins spread throughout the academy. Cha-Sun was curious when he saw what people were talking about. He didn't know how to answer. Suddenly a group of people came to see Lewin. A beautiful underclassman shyly asked if he was Lewin Sr. Then there were not just one, but 3 younger sisters surrounding him, all of whom liked him and gave him food packages. Then the girls shyly left, leaving Lewin wondering what was going on. Lewin immediately asked Father Sun if he wanted to eat this. Father Sun suddenly became indignant and explained to him like this. It was disrespectful to the ladies who had to fight with shame to make lunch for him. Lewin was bewildered and didn't understand. Even though Father Sun was jealous, Lewin used his eyes to see information. He had great potential. I tested a lot of people and only Miku showed high potential. Lewin saw his father's potential and immediately advised, Dad, please try a little harder in the next test. I'm sure you'll do well. After some persuasion by Lewin, Father Sun determined that in the next test he would be the one with the highest score. But until now, my father still can't believe it. Cha-Sun wonders if you're the Lewin I've known for the past 6 years. Even Lewin himself still can't believe what's happening recently. He also said about the recent rumor that Lewin could surpass Mike and even become the representative of the academy. Lewin stood up and said, I don't care about that. Let's go inside. Sun's father immediately ran after him and mentioned that there was a great festival this year. In May, the great ranks of famous academies will gather and a magic festival will be held to choose the best. And every 8 years all the magicians will go to the Olympic Assembly to choose the strongest. The convention that will take place in the year of both events is a nationwide competition where the brightest students of the academies showcase their abilities and the winner will bring a large amount of money and receive special privileges. Permission. That's why the number of students participating in the grand convention is limited, 1 single contestant and 30 group contestants. The top 31 of each academy will participate in this grand competition and the participants will the applicant will be the academy representative. In the academy's dining room, everyone was talking about who would represent the academy. Father Sun insisted that Lewin would be the representative and the surrounding friends also agreed because each boy got 100 points from Kinram. Everyone talked about Mike's participation in the magic conference. The results were nothing to expect, the group competition was nothing to discuss, and in the single round, Miku ranked 4th out of 5. And that's also the reason why Ignatius Academy is considered a bottom-class academy. Everyone thought he would help the academy erase that nickname. Lewin is not proud because there is still one final exam left. The person selected to participate in the Congress will be the one who tops the exam and receives the nomination of professors. The fourth test is a one-on-one battle between Lewin and Michael, and that's also the reason why he has to really focus on the next test. And this is a great opportunity for you to defeat fairly. For days after the combat test, Lewin continues to try to complete the task to add strength index. The system notifies Lewin that he has achieved 1,000 power points and has received the title of finishing his probationary period. I'm excited to finally be able to wait for this day to level up right away. Touch Page into a jumping position. He jumped onto his shoulder. Lewin is still feeding as always. Touch Page absorbs all the energy that Lewin creates. The colon's body has undergone strange changes. Flames radiate around the body. Lewin doesn't understand what's going on. He suddenly realized something. The scene moves to where Professor Erit is standing. He's still bitter about the fact that he suggested Lewin to fight the goblins, but that's why Lewin got more points. He immediately wondered if Lewin could defeat Michael with his current strength. He thought that was unlikely to happen. If Lewin wins, Mike's position at the festival and his title as valedictorian will be shaken. Garfin's family must definitely lead this academy at any cost. Returning to the page, he had graduated from middle school. Notification system to receive strength reward plus 200 stats. Lewin was surprised to see the change in the page. And thanks to that, his strength index was increased by 200 points and is now 1,200 strength points. Trang smiled smugly and said that this was just the beginning. The difficulty and rewards of the quest had already increased. Lewin immediately checked the mission system to regularly practice physical training. 2. Kick, punch and spin 5,000 times, run 15 kilometers to practice actual combat, and the reward for strength index increased by 30. Although the mission intensity has doubled, this is not difficult for Lewin, but he still didn't understand what actual combat training was, so he asked Trang. Trang immediately replied, "Do you remember the first time we met? I said I could turn into anything? It's not like last time, but this time the page can transform, but there will still be limits." Lewin immediately asked him if he could turn into a human, but at his current level it was impossible, but turning into a human was very difficult. Touch the page and immediately try to transform for Lewin to see. A wave surrounds the page. The body gradually changes. A new form appears. In front of him, the page immediately transformed into a scarecrow. Lewin thought, but he didn't seem surprised at all. Trang immediately got angry. Then he told me not to underestimate the straw scarecrow. When Darika first started training, I was his supporter, which also means that the page will act as a target for you to practice on, and every day you need to practice actual combat with the armor. But currently, the strength of the Tang is still weak, only equivalent to that of a third-level mage. And when you regain your strength, you can turn into anything, whether dragon or demon. Lewin immediately challenged him. So let's move on now. I asked you to turn into a magician. Follow Lewin's wishes. He summoned the staff in his hand. The profile also said that even if it hits, it will only cause shock and will not cause damage, even to anyone. After hearing that, Lewin immediately focused completely on the practice session. Touch Page creates a large ball of fire magic. He immediately dodged both of them. No one was willing to yield to the other. And he tries so hard because he knows his opponent is not an easy product. Emiko went to Professor Erit's room to discuss how to defeat Lewin. The teacher immediately blamed him. If he had been a little stronger at that time, things would have been different. He immediately stopped Professor Erit and he also learned the truth. He realized that he was the one who invented the 3 leprechaun cases. Emiko continued to blame him for getting a perfect score. If we knew that, you would think life would be difficult for him too. Professor, you're angry and you brat dare to talk to me like that, huh? The two of us immediately thought of a way to solve this problem. Professor Erit had an idea. Then he gave Mike something. He suddenly realized that it was a natural flower, a type of awakening grass. This flower grows in the northern illusion region. It is a rare herb that can be used to prepare special spirit pills. And when taken, it will help achieve the state of awakening. The mana casting time will be very short, but it will eliminate the feeling of pain and make it difficult to recognize the enemy on our side. In other words, not feeling anything at all. Mike is confused. Do you want me to drink this? Are you crazy? Professor Erit reminded him that he lost to that guy and now he wants to bring bad reputation to his family again, or what? He immediately feared that this would be too risky. Professor Hideo knew that his strength was not equal and if discovered, it would be very dangerous. Erit patted her chest confidently. You forgot who I am. Drug testing is my job. The professor immediately gave him a bottle of medicine that could help erase the traces. He immediately reminded me how to use it. Professor Erit with a sinister face said, don't be afraid because the Gari High lineage is the only way to get ahead and decide whether you will marry or not. Mike hesitated and thought about whether or not he should. And then the one-on-one combat exam arrived at the exam venue at the Mana Barrier Square. Whenever a test takes place, the test area is always packed with people. And this is the battle between Lewin and Michael. The two opponents immediately stepped onto the field to compete. Trang reminds the opponent that he only specializes in close combat, and if he prepares in advance, this battle will be quite difficult. Lewin confidently replied, "What if I could approach him?" Trang replied without surprise that all it took was one punch and she was down. In order for the test to be as similar to real combat as possible, the field is prepared and arranged with a variety of terrain elements. The teacher gave a command, "You ready?" Lewin noticed something unusual. He felt there was something wrong with Michael. Mike's condition looks very unusual. Normally Mike always acts arrogant, but not today. Lewin uses authentic labels to check. The system displays a particularly violent status. He was surprised to notice something strange because he had never seen that state before. Lewin immediately thought about whether he had done something to hide the illegal use of medicinal herbs. He suspected that Professor Irit was the one who let Michael use something and covered for him. The referee announced that the rules of the battle only prohibit dark magic. The rest of the 4 elemental magics are allowed and points will be based on the level of the magic types. In addition, when in this hall, the power of magic is reduced to 99%, so there is no need to worry about the opponent. Lewin raised his hand in question. Mike felt guilty when he saw him asking about the exam rules. What would happen if one of them was discovered to be using a banned substance? The professor said that student would be stripped of his right to compete and fail the test this time and could be forced to drop out of school. But why did he ask that? He looked towards Michael and decided not to say what he was thinking. Both are ready to take their positions. Currently, only he can recognize the problem with Michael, but he cannot explain it to everyone because he cannot see the status window. He decided to find evidence. The atmosphere became more tense. The teacher shouted loudly, signaling the two of them to prepare. The war started and Lewin immediately rushed towards Mike. He jumped up high and cast wood magic, summoning tree trunks to hold Lewin's feet. He easily used force to escape. The whole stadium was filled with surprise at the battle. This hall is a great advantage for Lewin because it will reduce mana power, but your power will not be affected. Michael cast magic to summon a large skull. It accumulated a large amount of magic. He shouted loudly and released a large amount of fire magic. Lewin quickly moved to avoid the attack. Taking advantage of the terrain, he appeared a giant rock. He hid there to avoid Michael's enormous power. Lewin realized that reducing time and increasing mana was the effect of the elixir that Michael used. He confidently shouted, "Don't hide out here and face me, you rabbit. The more I play, the more excited I get than usual." Lewin realized what Michael was using. It's definitely a kind of flower burning awakening. His hands trembled in extreme excitement, his ability to feel pain, and his difficulty in distinguishing between friend and foe were all too obvious to him. And the only thing that hasn't shown up yet is the pain-inhibiting effect. Lewin stood opposite Mike and exposed everything, saying, "Why you are so confident is because of that thing, right?" He confidently asserted that it was the burning of flowers. Michael was shocked that Lewin could recognize that thing. But Lewin didn't inform the teacher. He decided he would be able to defeat Michael himself no matter how many flowers. He now unleashed all his strength, using the time refraction skill to increase his movement speed and rush towards Michael. He panicked at that speed. Mike created a wall of ice to stop you. It cannot stop Lewin. He gathered his magic power and swung his legs to cut the ice wall in half. The whole audience was surprised and shouted, not understanding what kind of magic it was. He then cast a level 3 fire magic spell and a giant dinosaur appeared and rushed towards Lewin. Lewin put all his strength into his hands to perform seismic moves. He punched the ground with a powerful impact, a stone barrier to stop the dinosaur. The whole stadium was full of surprise about the war. Mike was pushed backwards by the shock wave. He was frightened. Lewin came closer in front of Michael. With a victorious smile, he raised his hand, his thumb and index finger touching. He was frightened. Lewin put strength into his fingers and flicked his forehead. A loud explosion shook the entire stadium. It was just a snap of the fingers, but in terms of damage, it was extremely large and the whole person flew back and hit the rock hard. Everyone in the stands was surprised. There was smoke and dust all around the arena. Lewin's eyes kept looking in one direction. Michael shouted loudly, "How dare you look down on me?" He immediately rushed forward and punched him hard in the face. One after another, Lewin continuously punched towards Michael but could not hurt him. He was punched away, his head hit a rock, but he is still conscious and his body may not be able to handle the shock. Lewin didn't want to continue anymore, so he touched his shoulder. He used his chest to force the stems of the lotus tree to grow and wrap around the Michael. Lewin informed the referee that Mike had used a banned substance. The referee immediately asked me what I meant. Why did Mike use a banned substance? If I told the truth, I could be disqualified from competing. Lewin still affirms that what he said is true. He explained because there was a possibility that the use of banned substances was hidden or someone had discovered it but turned a blind eye. and the person with the ability to use rare ingredients was also the one responsible for pre-match testing. And there is only one person who can do that, none other than Professor Irit. In addition, Irit is also Emiku's uncle. He immediately teleported down. The professor panicked and asked Lewin, "Do you know what you are saying?" He shouted loudly, "You said Miku used banned substances and I turned a blind eye, huh?" Lewin confidently answered, "Yes, I have proof." He challenged, "So let's go again," but he already knew the professor's trick was to use spirit pills to hide his expression. The professor is starting to worry. "So where's the evidence you're talking about?" Lewin walked in front of a huge tree. For some reason, the tree exploded into hundreds of pieces. With just a snap of Lewin's fingers, he explained that this was the flick of my forehead earlier. Lewin said, "Let's say Emiku's magic has improved thanks to practice, but how can he endure such attacks and still be able to keep his composure and smile? Emiku's body is seriously injured right now, yet he still smiled as if nothing had happened." Professor Irit was speechless when discovered. The principal above, after hearing Lewin's explanation, shouted Professor Irit's name. Face full of anger, he shouted loudly, "How dare you do something like this in such a sacred place? Follow me to the office immediately." Professor Irit trembled and feared that he might have gone too far this trip. Emiku still keeps smiling like a crazy person. Then the fourth exam passed quickly. The students were talking about Professor Irit being fired and Mike being expelled too. Lewin has a new nickname, the Exorcist Saint, because anyone who touches it will have an unfortunate ending. Lewin came to a giant door. He was summoned by the principal and a light appeared at his feet. His whole body seemed to be transported to another dimension. The rays of light shined on his face. He panicked suddenly when before his eyes is the domain of the Adao family. Lewin was very shocked about this place. Immediately prayed to the chair in front of him. "That's the Tiron throne, the seat of the ultimate magician. You don't understand why it's here." The principal appeared and asked the students what they saw. Lewin, he explained this place to me through the eyes of Malak. Mar Loc was the leader who started the war to invade the continent. Legend has it that he had the ability to make a person see what they wanted, and after he died, his body was refined into a treasure object. He also said that Malak's eyes are a treasure that helps you see what you want to see. What appeared before your eyes just now will be similar to what you desire most. What he desires is to revive the Adao family's domain and become the most powerful magician. The principal asked if you were curious about what I saw. Lewin, he said, a world where everyone behaves according to their responsibilities. Students are students, magicians are magicians. Of course it was not easy. Both teacher and student stood in front of the gate. The gate gradually opens. Lewin looked back. The day he won over his friends under cheers. The day you became valedictorian. That is also what you will try to achieve it. Back to the principal's room. He invited Lewin to tea. The principal looked at him as if he had something to ask. He said, "I called you in because I have something to ask you. Will you answer? Among countless banned substances, how do you know that what Mike used was fuel to burn flowers?" Lewin replied that Mike's attitude was not the same as usual. He replied loudly that he was violent, but he was also nervous, not to mention the amplification and flow of mana were also abnormal, so I deduced that he was using natural flowers. He wondered, "But in my opinion you seem to be certain, not just a guess anymore. Why is that so?" He explained that the hall only reduced magical power, not physical power, and that what he used was physical power, not magic. He added that I'm sure Emiku was in too much shock but still smiled and didn't seem to be in any pain, and that could only prove that he used fuel to burn flowers. The principal was extremely impressed that he was only 16 years old, but he was able to detect even the smallest changes in his opponent, not to mention that he also handled the situation very calmly. He said that as the principal of the academy, "I am very sorry about this incident and sincerely apologize to Mr. Lewin. He has a proposal for Lewin. Do you want to attend the Grand Festival in July this year as a student representative?" Lewin was shocked to hear that because being an academy representative is a position that everyone aspires to. Before coming here, he vaguely realized. He replied, "Thank you, teacher. I feel very honored to accept your offer, but I also know you're still inexperienced. You haven't had a single real fight in the past 5 years. He timidly said that during that time, he couldn't do anything or achieve anything because of his mana disorder, and the festival was a gathering place for talented people. He didn't know if he had enough the power to compete with them. The principal thought it was a big deal, but it wasn't a problem. As a judge at the conference, the principal is confident that I think you will deserve the title of champion candidate. He affirmed that he was a very talented contestant, and what was even scarier, Lewin will be a secret weapon that no one expected. His face turned red. To them you are a mystery. They have no information about you. They don't know what techniques you will use or what fighting style you will use, and of course they won't be able to find a way to counter it. He realized that he was always in last place, so they weren't careful and they didn't know as much information about him as Emiku. It seemed like this year the whole festival would be surprised with a new element. The principal asked the students one last time whether they wanted to participate or not. I'm confident that you will try your best not to disappoint me. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. A character walked in. The principal said, Lewin, I think the physical skills class will be more useful for you than the magic class, so I invited someone here who can help you develop those skills. He suddenly realized. The person standing in front of him was Wutu. He is the captain of the knights in Furen territory, one of only 5 5th-level knights in the Radian Kingdom. And this is also the person you met in the third test. I didn't expect that the two of them would have such a good relationship. Now, Lewin will be taught by Goatee. I need to verify a few things. Did I hear Professor Hideo say you are a special magician who can only fight in close combat? Is that true? Lewin replied, yes, that's true. He said that from what I saw, his movements were quite good and quick, without any unnecessary movements. But he still has one flaw. He has never learned martial arts. Wutu explains that his move may have worked against the monster from before, but to us he will be completely red no matter how strong he is. Opponents with good physical skills can. Aware of his attacks through his shoulder and hip movements, Lewin also understood his own problem. The moves he used to do were all repetitive movements from missions, so he couldn't apply them much in battle. While you were worried, Gotong encouraged you not to worry. If you learn from me, your movements will change from the most basic things. Gauta stood up happily and said, let's start now. The class begins immediately after that. For a knight the most important thing is his feet. Steady feet will help him swing the sword more forcefully, and his feet will help him predict the next movement of his enemy, so the first lesson will be is the right step. Only when you learn how to walk correctly can you use your body skills. Tien martial arts is a martial art often used in training knights. Lewin diligently practices and follows what he is taught. He said this discipline includes a total of 36 martial arts styles, not including sword skills. And so on day after day. He still studied hard and followed what his teacher taught him. Gaoti supports Lewin as much as possible. He once wondered and asked in detail, I don't get any benefit from teaching you martial arts, so I have to go to the academy every day. I kindly replied, just think of it as a form of investment. Lewin still doesn't understand. Gaoto explained that I had met someone who could become a talented magician like you in the future if I played a part in supporting that person. He happily continued to say that it was considered a worthy investment, right? Lewin bowed down very gratefully. So I'm counting on you, Professor Gaoto. I'm shy, but saying, Professor, sounds so awkward. Just call me brother. I'm only 30. Lewin was surprised and couldn't believe it, and then he was taught by Gaoto for a while. His physical skills had also increased significantly. Gaoto greatly admired and recognized Lewin's bravery. He remembered when Lewin's third test he examined the goblin's body and couldn't believe its jaw was broken. A close combat mage who is stronger than a goblin is truly an interesting kid. Just like that, 3 weeks passed, his body art skills had leveled up to level 10 and his strength stats had also increased. Thanks to his mastery of martial arts, he became stronger and reached high school level. Lewin's current strength index is already 2130. He feels that this strength is too great. Da Trang was also surprised at how quickly he gained this power. He said it took more than a year since he met Da Raka to reach 2000 powers. Father Sun shouted loudly for Lewin from afar. He panicked and ran quickly to Lewin. Lewin immediately asked Father Sun what was going on. Father Sun shouted loudly that the list of contestants for the Grand Festival has been posted at the Academy gate. Just that day at the opening ceremony, Lewin, representing the new students, stood on the podium. Because of that, he became the object of jealousy and suspicion. In response to this jealousy he has committed pathetic acts over the past 6 years. All he could do was stand from afar and watch Mike receive everyone's congratulations. And now you can do more amazing things than you can imagine. Lewin and Father Sun ran to the front gate of the academy. He was so happy that the results were so clear. Notification list representative is Lewin. Everyone around cheered when they saw him standing there. There are no longer words of jealousy but congratulations and support from everyone for Lewin. Even though it took him a long time to constantly try to overcome the difficulties and finally he became the representative of the academy again. Professor Hideo was very surprised when Gaoto said he was proficient in martial arts. But a 16-year-old 5th grade student admired his professor for his genius. He encouraged me to believe I could do it. And so the preparations for the Great Festival went smoothly just in time to reach the antenna where the Great Festival was held. The students were talking about transportation, not knowing what it would be like. The Mana ship only has a transit point in the Radian Kingdom, while the Rainer Empire has more than 100 transit points. A bossy voice rang out, TSK Tusk, the country kids were just going on a Mana train, but there was a lot of noise. He expressed disdain, don't have such a country house anymore and be quiet. Father Sun couldn't stand his attitude and shouted loudly, you bastard. That guy is Henket, he is Mike's henchman who attended last year's magic festival with him. Henket scorned that if you think Lewin will create some miracle in the festival, give up, he's so arrogant just because he got good grades in the first semester. The guy next to him was no different. He said that the representatives of the other academies were like ghosts, so we would have a better chance of winning if Miku was the representative. Anyway, I will not accept it as a student representative. Father-son was full of anger but wanted to rush in and punch them. There are a lot of bastards who want to benefit even a little by hanging on to the Garifin family, but you have to really do well in this competition even though you have to team up with those guys. Lewin couldn't help but encourage those guys. If you speak your mind, Miku will probably be satisfied with dogs that are still loyal to their owners even though their owners are about to be kicked out of the academy. Henket is angry. You just called us dogs. Lewin is not the right type. You're lucky. I try to say it as clearly as possible for an intelligent person like you to understand. But you don't understand. Lewin wants him to understand the current problem. This great festival will be on a different level than the magic festivals you have attended before, and if you have good results you will have better opportunities that the Garifin cannot give. He shouted loudly. Of course if we had good results then everything would be like that, but is that possible? The contestants are all monsters and we have no right to decide their fate self. Lewin didn't want to hear those excuses anymore. He insisted that we could do it. He explained that the Grand Festival was an event where unity was the most important thing. It was better to ignore the factors that hindered team spirit, and reminded the others. Henket thinks that Lewin will play without them. Lewin replied on the way there, think again about who your current representative is, and there will be no garage here to recognize your faithfulness. He shouted loudly, you're ruining my first match. I won't listen to any orders from you in the Grand Festival. The train of mana rushes forward. Everyone in the class is interested in this speed of movement. Touching the page is no different. He is equally interested. The door between the two cars immediately opened. Lewin smells something bad. A bunch of people from a certain school came over here to look down on Ignatius Academy. The symbol on their shirts is that of the Osaka National Magic Academy. The only academy that trains students in Ototo, the Sand Kingdom built in the desert, is famous for its ancient history. They are especially known for honing their swordsmanship and body to the maximum. Lewin doesn't understand what people from the National Magic Academy are doing here. One of the guys in the group immediately asked, where are those stupid academy guys, Miku? Surely it wasn't because of adversity that he ran away. I was planning on asking him to take care of us this year. He laughed loudly and said he took care of her like a slave. Then he continued to harass other students, constantly insulting Igenit Academy. Dao Trang chuckled, oh my god, you're so patient. You still managed to sit still after hearing those words. This was the first time he witnessed this because before he couldn't afford to participate and his academy was being treated very poorly. Lewin noticed. Professor Hideo has no intention of intervening because this is a competition between students and the professor's position is simply that of an instructor. But this year he is the representative of the academy, so all powers and responsibilities are in his hands, so he decided that this cannot continue like that. He immediately asked Henket, where is your Mike representative? Lewin replied that Mike was probably bedridden, praying for his broken ribs to heal. He stood up to everyone's bewilderment. Henket said that Lewin is the representative of the academy. He was surprised because this was the first time he met Lewin. He walked in front of Lewin. He looked at Lewin and introduced me as Setar, representative of Oota, and what is your name? He confidently answered Lewin. You said I think the first meeting and greeting is enough. If you're done causing trouble then get out of our compartment. But of course, before you leave, you'll apologize for calling us a stupid academy. I mean sincerely apologize. Setar was very angry when he heard Lewin say that. He said you just told me to apologize. He turned to Henket and shouted loudly. Haven't you told him who he is? He kept yelling at Henket. Lewin saw everything and he understood. This is why the festival participants are scared when they see the OTA Academy guys being bullied by Setar. They did it on purpose, to demoralize everyone before competition. Only then did Lewin realize that the great festival had already begun right now. Lewin immediately challenged Setar. He's bitter, do you think I'm scared? Before he could punch, a professor from OTA Academy came to stop him. He turned to look at his professor. He shouted loudly, let's just sit and love, okay? What did you do before the match? You already want to make enemies right now. Then he apologized to the professor. Wearing my students was so disrespectful. On behalf of them, I sincerely apologize to the teacher. He pushed Setar back to the academy ship even though Setar was trying to explain. Before leaving, he turned around to look at Lewin and promised to take revenge on him one day. You watched him leave just like that and immediately thought to yourself that it wasn't as easy as you thought from the beginning. Setar immediately asked the professor why he stopped me, and what was more surprising was that he was the one who suggested this method. Setar didn't understand why. The professor sighed and said, you didn't see it, didn't you see him smiling? Setar didn't understand what he was saying. The professor explained to him that Professor Hideo smiled while observing me as if he was waiting for me to make a move. He wasn't sure what could happen, either. But I think there's something about that Lewin kid that we don't know. He's not the same guy that Miku fought with you last time. Setar only knows how to be silent and patient. After the Oluta group left, the atmosphere changed strangely. Everyone immediately gathered to discuss the next battle. The first match was a group match without representatives. Everyone was disappointed and humiliated when they learned that Lewin would not join them. One of them, Hennet, refused to give in as if he was Lewin's representative of the academy. Hennet shouted loudly at them. We must not lose. Just now they were still full of ego and jealousy, but now they are united like this. Everyone immediately asked after he had a little collision with the Setar guy earlier. Lewin preaches to groups, don't you find it annoying? Those guys look down on you guys look down on the representative of our school coming out as my representative, and if I sit still, what will happen? Surely they will enjoy it even more and despise us even more. If you don't do anything then the academy is really as stupid as they say you want it to be. Do you want to be despised? Lewin shouted loudly. It's because you guys went into the water that they looked down on us for the past 5 years. So what do you want now? This is not the time to lose unity because of ego. After being preached to by Lewin, everyone became united, including the Hendets who also began to listen to what he said. Looks like Miku's tail is also participating, so it stays that way until the contest ends. At the next station, everyone advises each other to bring their luggage down. Yin is a state belonging to the Royal Federation of Ryane. This is also the only state considered a neutral state of the empire, so when entering here, even if it is an enemy for thousands of years, it must be temporary. Put aside hatred. If bloodshed occurs in the territory of Athens, the Reina Empire, as the continental hegemon, will judge the matter. That's why large-scale international competitions are held in Athens, such as the Grand Festival of the Mags Guild and the Grand Treasure of the Sword Guild. Goodnight Academy is present at Yin. We were all surprised by the development here. Lewin is a bit overwhelmed by this place. As expected of being the capital of the kingdom, everything looks ancient and everyone seems comfortable. Here you see how small we really are. Lewin immediately saw a horse-drawn carriage approaching. The professor announced that we will now go to the resting place. Everyone get in the car. Okay. A group of horse-drawn carriages carrying practitioners away. Professor reminds you, even if it's unintentional, not to go to other academies. The professor reminded Lewin that there was no point in causing trouble at this time. I don't understand why he said that and looked at me like that. Trang looked excitedly out the window. Lewin doesn't know what's going on out there. Trang said I just smelled an extremely interesting smell. He jumped down to Lewin's feet, touching and realizing something. Looks like the ruins of the Dara are here. The next day at the Ignite Academy dormitory, father-son had not yet woken up when Lewin hurriedly went somewhere. He immediately ran out. The page tells you that you will see it appear on the map shortly. Trang shouted loudly. Hey, in front of him was a vibrating memory factory. Lewin immediately pushed the door open and went inside. You thought the Black Dragon's belongings must be in a special place, but this place looks so ordinary. It should have been some place like the black market or rich people's basements, right? The page explains that not all magicians can use Lewin to use the player's eye. A stream of power immediately appeared coming from one side. Those streams of power came from one thing. That is the player's treasure. It is also the DARKA's first defeat. The ability to be immune to damage will help resist physical impacts on the body, increasing the ability to neutralize physical damage. Physical. Lewin was disappointed when the 2 words failed. Paltrang explained. This one is a bit special. It is not only resistant to normal physical attacks but also resistant to normal touches. Even the lover is not allowed to hug anymore. However, the page still advises you that you need this thing. The system board announces a 200-point increase in strength when wearing equipment. When I heard the power increase, I quickly put it on. The ring that was printed on your finger seemed like it was born just for you. Lewin went to the checkout to pay for this ring. The kind boss said to take it away. It's been here for a long time and I don't know how to preserve it. Lewin felt a bit shy so he decided to go buy something else. Spectators use external eyes to view a person's information. It also determines the value of objects. He recognized a rare item. The system board announces a high rarity. This is a quantum mechanical scroll about magic and swordsmanship. He was about to pick up the book when a girl quickly touched it. Lewin was surprised by the girl in front of him. The player told him with his own eyes that it was Irene, a level 5 mage. King of Hell, the king of magicians, the ultimate magician Teiron. Irene is one of 11 successor mags personally chosen by him. You also heard that she's a genius about to reach level 5. But the truth is that she's a 5th grader and it seems like the rumors have diminished her abilities. Irene is beautiful but a bit cunning but still likes to hold on. She tells him to let go, but Lewin doesn't give in. She said looking at the uniform, "You must be from Hygienist Academy." "I'm Irene from Seki Women's University." "You found what you needed, now you're just looking for something else." "That's right, I came for this book, can you give it to me?" Lewin realized she had heard him talk. He didn't understand why she bought this book. "You asked, why do you need this book?" "Very few people want to buy books like this," Irene replied hesitantly. "Just for homework, I can't explain clearly, you know that's okay." Lewin secretly thought it wasn't school homework or something related. He gallantly gave this book to Irene and explained that it was important to him so he could just take it. Then he went looking for other things. She looked bewildered as if she had something difficult to say. Lewin immediately went home and told his friends about meeting Irene. Every guy's eyes light up when talking about beautiful girls. Father-son was jealous of his dream of touching Irene. Lewin was helpless after hearing that. Hendit laughed out loud. "It's so ordinary that I also got to meet Irene at the festival." Before he could finish his sentence, his father jumped in to interject. Then just because of a girl, the quarrelsome guy became helpless and frustrated. Hendit said that Irene was always strong and only ranked second, and heard that she lost every year. In addition, Irene is the top at Ryane Military Training School. Irene is also recognized by the most people compared to her peers. Hendez also said that Irene is also the owner of the light sword. Lewin realized that the reason she needed that book at that time was to defeat the worms. Hendit added, "But being a swordsman is no good compared to other weapons. A magic sword doesn't bring much more power. It's difficult to master swordsmanship. It's not easy either. But this Firefly is different. His light sword is an S-class treasure, and in terms of performance, it is at least equal to a normal knight. Your father doesn't understand anything, so you don't care." Lewin, on the other hand, felt extremely worried. One was a 5th level mage when he was only 10 years old. One was a swordsman who was always at the top of the rankings. He gradually lost confidence in himself. Could he win when meeting such geniuses? Surely no one would pay attention to someone like you. But it was the principal's encouragement that made him want to try himself more than ever. A student immediately announced that you guys had a lineup to debut at the opening ceremony. This is not the time to decide to give up. This is your chance to prove yourself. The battle at the great festival. It's just starting to happen. The debut lineup has finally been announced. Lewin is curious about who his opponent is. Ignat Academy will compete against Otota Academy. Seta is full of words, so it's too easy. If you fight with us, you'll have more time to play around. Lewin is very shy when confronting the OOTA, because they are known to play dirty. Not to mention there were many people at his school who were psychologically haunted by them. He despised and laughed at us for being so weak that we couldn't even get excited. It's boring. OOTA Academy is constantly being teased. Lewin is calm, and this is your chance to prove to us. Ignatius Academy is no longer so easy to bully. Lewin replied that we are also waiting for you. Setar doesn't understand what you're planning to do. He said, "What do you want?" Lewin replied that I just wanted to introduce myself. He shouted, "Nice to meet you all. I'm Lewin, the representative of those stupid academies everyone's talking about. I won't say much, just a small request. Don't ever call us stupid academics again, it's so harsh." Setar was surprised by his confident attitude. He confidently said that I was tired of being at the bottom of the table and from now on, I want to be the leader. OOTA Academy immediately shouted loudly. Setar looked down on Lewin and said, "You think this place is like some village pond competition? Leader, why does my ear itch so much? Who do you think you are?" Lewin remembered what the principal said. He confidently answered that I was the trump card. At the Osaka Academy's resting area, they are talking about who Lewin is. One of them said that at the beginning of last semester, he suddenly changed his score by 180 degrees. Setar was surprised to hear Lewin's unusual change. He was worried and remembered what the professor had told him. He thought to himself that he was probably thinking too much. He stood up and decided to teach the Ignite Academy a lesson. By doing what the Toyota Academy tradition does. At the Ignite Academy's dormitory, everyone's planning for tomorrow's test, which is to throw mana grenades. The rules are group matches except for the student representative. All group members can participate. The challenge requires throwing a mana grenade at a stone human, and the team that takes it down faster wins. Everyone is not confident because there will be no participants in this contest. You immediately oppressed everyone. It's true that our personal abilities are not as good as those of the OOTA, but I believe everyone will win. Everyone was confused. Lewin explains that this is a group match. If everyone cooperates, they will definitely win. Let's start by dividing into small groups. People don't understand what the point of dividing into small groups is. Lewin outlines the tasks for each group. Group 1 will heat the grenades, Group 2 will be responsible for transporting, Group 3 will attack the kicker, Group 4 will hinder the opponent by healing the kicker over there. Everyone thinks this is not possible and doesn't believe in themselves. He thought for a moment and said, "How are you guys doing? Remember what I said in front of them? I said we would be the leaders, and that was serious. Whether I participate or not, I will still help you all my best. When Odota gives one blow, we strike 2 or 3 times. The members of Odota all have excellent abilities, so we do it the traditional way. One by one, Father Sun and Hendet placed their trust in him. Gradually everyone in the class trusted him. Seeing that everyone agreed, he immediately divided into different groups. Each team will do different jobs. He divided the team based on each person's ability. By using the real player's eye, with the ability to see through the opponent's abilities, he can minimize disadvantages and focus more on everyone's advantages. Everyone's belief in victory is increasing day by day, because when people join the right team, they will gradually have more confidence. Lewin is happy to see everyone around. Everyone was more confident than last time. The joy didn't last long when a student of the Igenet school, covered in wounds, returned. His body was beaten and bruised. Lewin panicked and worried about him. He was scared and told that it was the Oota who beat him. Filled with anger, Lewin immediately went to the Oota's motel. Setar was not surprised when you appeared there. He also arrogantly said, "What are you going to do? What do you think you can do to us?" Lewin shouted loudly for Setar to come here immediately. At Oota's motel, but he was still not afraid. Setar immediately stood up and walked towards Lewin. He wondered why you always act like you do. Lewin put her hand on his shoulder and calmly replied, "What's the basis?" He pressed his wings hard on Setar's shoulder. His body could not withstand Lewin's strength and immediately faltered. He couldn't believe how he could be so strong. He angrily raised his fist towards Lewin. You dodged easily and then quickly grabbed his arm. Setar's body is locked tightly. Lewin seriously said, "I warn you that if you dare touch our people once, this won't end here." His face filled with pain. He grabbed his arm tightly. He looked towards Lewin. He confidently asked why he wanted to play a bet with us. Returning to the Igenet Students' Resort, everyone was surprised by the bet that if Igenet Academy won, Setar would have his forehead flicked by Lewin. Besides, they also had to apologize in front of everyone. After everyone heard that, everyone seemed to gain strength to win. A student ran to announce that it was time to go to the gymnasium. The great festival of magicians and the entire continent. In history the magicians present here all became important factors in changing the destiny of the entire continent. In the stands, there were many people cheering for Ignatius. Lewin still didn't expect that he was also a part of this place, a place that created legends in history. The professor announced that the opening ceremony had ended and asked him to return to his seat. Lewin walks coldly and coolly. But how did fate let him meet Setar? He's still angry about last time. Lewin still doesn't care about him. The current goal that Lewin is aiming for is not Setar. His eyes turn to the other side. The target he is most afraid of is the worm, the winner of the magic festival and also the most outstanding person of the Ryanae military training school. If you can go deep into the inner circles, you will definitely have to confront him. He realized there was a girl's voice next to him. He was surprised to see Irene. She told him how yesterday he was rioting everywhere, even went to OTA Academy to cause trouble. Lewin was bewildered. He asked Irene how he knew that. Not only her but probably everyone here already knew. Lewin was a bit shy and said, "Is that so? I didn't cause any trouble, just a small confession. Because of the last time he gave her the book, she gave him some advice, don't make yourself stand out too much. Lewin also spoke his mind like you, right? You're also hiding your talent." She suddenly didn't believe he could find out. He immediately greeted Irene and left to prepare for the first event, leaving Irene bewildered. With only a few minutes left, the mana grenade throwing competition will begin. The first 2 teams are Ignite students and Otota Academy. The students of Ignite students are ready. Everyone cheering each other on or showing people our strength, showing them we are no longer just a bunch of stupid academies. They just confidently walked straight into the competition area. The first event of mana grenade throwing has officially started. Everyone in the stand seems to be very confused, because until now, winning the competition had been based on individual ability. Arranging a team like the Knights of the Irish Academy was a strange thing for everyone. Everyone despised that Ignatius Academy would lose anyway. Lewin just stood silently observing the developments. The whole audience was surprised. Everyone doesn't believe that. When I saw that the man playing on Ignat's team had lost an arm, everyone at the academy cheers and encourages each other to try harder. Lewin was equally enthusiastic, standing from afar and still shouting instructions to everyone. Ignatius Academy successfully destroyed the remaining arm. On the OTA Academy side, it's the complete opposite. Everyone on this team lost their temper and became bitter when they realized their team was about to lose. On the field, they can only give in to Lewin's layout. He was full of anger. Irene also has to admire Ignite Academy. The reason why Ignite Academy overcame the advantage in personal ability is because they used tactics. But more importantly, it is necessary to clearly understand each person's capabilities for this strategy to be effective. Irene blushed as she remembered meeting Lewin and how he found the book he needed in just a moment. He can also divide groups into members based on each person's abilities. She wondered who this person was. Why had she never met him before at a magic festival? The mana grenade was charged with enough magic. Father immediately threw the stone at the man. With a loud crash, the stone shattered into many pieces. Setar became worried and her face turned purple. This trip will be far away. The stone man on the side of the Ignite has been defeated. The students of IGINIT were extremely happy and excited. Great festival, the first event in the competition where everyone thought Odota would win. Yet victory belongs to the stupid academy side. After this competition, the capture the flag between student representatives is about to begin. Everyone at the IGINIT Academy enthusiastically cheered for Lewin. The first match is between Representative Lewin of IGINIT Academy and Setar of Odota Academy. Da Trang reminds you why you look so tense, Lewin. Lewin replied that we are currently ranked 20 out of 32 schools, so that's pretty good, but Trang doesn't understand what he means. After the recent match, everyone is starting to focus their attention on the IGINIT Academy, and that is still not enough to remove the label that has been there for many years. So this time he was determined to win spectacularly. He explained the problem to Trang. Only with a spectacular victory over OTA would everyone look at it in a different light. Da Trang understood his intention, and must prove himself to the ultimate magicians. In a sail suspended high above, the ultimate magicians are observing the battle. The king of Pluto, Terran, is watching with his chin in his hand. He said Lewin the boy was once a candidate among the 11 normal children. He said Lewin was a natural genius, so he was able to learn how to use mana at a young age. And the king of hell was very disappointed when he learned that Lewin had a mana disorder. The principal said wasn't he the one who treated the boy as if he were incompetent and useless? The king of hell was silent for a moment, then said, but I didn't expect that at this time the teacher would choose such a student to represent the academy. I think he did so because he was preparing something interesting like before. The principal didn't explain anything further, just told him to see for himself and he would get the answer. Back to battle. Da Trang wondered what you were going to do now, whether it was binding or freezing, so you had to get closer to do it, or summon a guardian angel. Lewin all rejected those ideas and asked what kind of battle they were planning to fight. He confidently answered that he would only compete directly. The referee announced the start of the fight. Lewin quickly rushed towards Setar. He angrily said, "You will pay for what you did to me the other day." Then he gathered up his magic. Setar summons a guardian spirit to fight. A giant knight rushed to attack him. Lewin uses the time refraction skill. He ran away from the giant knight's pursuit. Lewin immediately appeared behind Setar. He turned back and counterattacked, but Lewin was able to resist easily. He realized that the knight only chased and attacked those in front of it. He struggled and shouted, "You going to give up?" He panicked when he realized the giant knight was pointing his spear at him. He shouted, "Stop, you stupid protector." He tried, but couldn't move. His face was filled with fear and anxiety. Lewin dares him to try running away. Setar remembered at that time, it's not because you let your guard down that Lewin is truly strong. He accepted that he had lost. Setar closed his eyes and waited, but did not see the guardian angel attack. He opened his eyes and glanced. Lewin is using his hands to directly attack the fighting guardian god. He was surprised to see Lewin's overwhelming power. Lewin pointed his bare hands at the steel guardian angel. The steel knight just disappeared. Setar keeps getting one surprise after another. Lewin walked to the opposite side of him. He asked, "Did you just save me?" Lewin replied, "Why should I save the person who humiliated my friend? Because I want to kill you myself." Lewin asked if he remembered the bet. Just a flick of the forehead. But it's very strange to fly like this and just fly dozens of meters away. If you snap like this, you might get a brain injury. The whole audience was suddenly speechless. The entire academy cheered and shouted. The gymnasium also burst into tears. The principal glanced at the king of hell. He stood still for a few seconds, because he was just named the ultimate magician but had never seen that type of magic before. You cannot imagine a person with mana disorder who can do those things. He secretly thought, "Who exactly are you?" Pluto is full of wrath. He asked the principal to tell him what he knew about Lewin. The principal thought for a moment and said, "He is a student who always does his duty, a person who thinks of giving up but in the end does not give up, a person who knows how to turn weakness into strength, and a magician who looks like a magician more than anyone else." The king of hell's face wrinkled. "You immediately said you wanted to protect your students from my curiosity, right? What if I just called Lewin here and asked him directly?" The principal couldn't bear it anymore if he intended to force the boy to speak. "Then I'll have to stop you again." Pluto did not get any information. He immediately said that you are using the magician's right to keep secrets, right? but a little exchange probably won't be a problem, okay? He aspires to reach the limit of magic and must definitely find out what kind of magic it is. Lewin, you won't be able to escape me. Ijinit Academy went to celebrate. Lewin advises us that we've only won one round, so we should focus on resting now. Let's just play around like this. Everyone paid no attention to Lewin's words. Father-son came drunk and asked Lewin to celebrate the victory. After all, it was a festival. He introduced drinks here such as coconut vanilla juice and also a bottle of Dragon's Kiss. Lewin wondered what it was. Son's father replied, "You know I always love my homeland. This is the specialty of father-son's place." Meanwhile, it seemed like someone was entering the shop. That person immediately came behind Lewin and Cha. Lewin turned around and discovered, "Is that Setar looks very regretful." Everyone was surprised when he came here again. Father-son said, "I know your self-esteem has been hurt because you lost to Lewin, so go away, don't ruin our fun." Lewin is still wondering why he is here. Setar came here to apologize. Lewin and father-son still don't understand. Setar sincerely said, "I'm sorry for looking down on you guys all this time. After being beaten at the gym, I realized I should not look down on others just because they are weaker than me. In the world there are still many people stronger than me, so to someone I can be a weak person, feeling that what I did to you guys was wrong." Father doesn't understand. Setar bowed down and apologized. Lewin doesn't know what to do either. We all see that there's something wrong with it and it's not sincere at all. He said, "Sorry for ruining the atmosphere. I'm leaving." Lewin immediately called him back. He asked if he was sorry because of the bet or because he was truly sorry. His face was filled with tears. He was sure he was sincere. Lewin also happily accepted to forgive him. He said, "Thank you for apologizing so manly," then raised his hand to shake hands with Setar. He looked like that for a while. Then they both shook hands, so everything that had happened before was considered reconciled. And he becomes a drinking buddy without realizing it. Setar and Lewin became closer and everyone happily drank several bottles of wine. Lewin woke up from his drunkenness. Your friend was there waiting for you to wake up. He tried to sit up, not remembering what happened last night. They reminded us about yesterday. How much do you like the Dragon's Kiss bottle? He cried and said, "Thank you for trusting me." Everyone burst out laughing, not expecting the perfect Lewin to also have this side. "I'm angry but can't do anything." He immediately remembered and wondered what kind of country he could see like that. From afar, someone called your name. He was surprised when it was Setar. Lewin shyly recalls last night's intimate moments with Setar. Lewin's face turned red and he quickly ran away. He walked down the hallway. Then Professor Hideo called him back. The professor immediately reminded me that wherever I go, trouble will follow. I didn't expect that he would know about that. The professor said that someone wants to see you. The principal was worried. He said it was a dangerous person with a kind appearance. Lewin asked who it was. Lewin was surprised to hear this name. The person who wants to meet you is King Tiron. Professor Hideo reminded him to be very careful. Tiron is a mysterious person. Many people who hide their true nature like him are very dangerous. He thought quietly. The professor said that after the exam is over, I will inform you about the time. Lewin told everyone about the King of Hell watching us. He said that was all the more reason to win, and he also planned for the exam. We will use a strategy called defense if possible. Everyone is confused. Lewin explained I would run to the goal. This is a match that uses moving arrows. They will continuously fly everywhere. The 9 members of each team will be divided into attack, defense and goalkeeper positions, and the team that launches more arrows into the opponent's goal will win. The rules are simple, but the match is highly tactically demanding. Don't know when to use defensive magic. When should I use control spells? You have to know how to catch the shuttlecock and throw it into the opponent's goal. There are many things to consider. The rival academy shouted attention. Lewin quickly dashes to the opposing team's defensive position. Ice pillars and ice spears created to stop him. Lewin easily used Fire Castle to destroy it. He just attacked straight into his opponent's defenses. In the stands, Setar was cheering Lewin and I get at school very enthusiastically. The rest of us don't understand why Setar became like that. Setar turned around and said, "Don't you know how to punch each other first and then be brothers?" He said there was no fighting. He was the only one who got beaten. Setar shouted loudly, "What did you say? That guy." These guys are still making noises about Setar and Lewin having problems. After yesterday's battle, Setar is sure of one thing. Lewin will be the next generation magician. He knew this because he directly fought with the best of the festival. But Lewin is stronger than those guys. But there is nothing but strength. You also have leadership skills and patience. It's almost time for OTA's team, but Setar still keeps thinking about the Lewin relationship. While on the field the opponent is powerless to block Lewin. The opponent uses all his moves on Lewin, but you can still easily avoid it all. He rushed towards the opposing team's defense team. Lewin confidently rushed into the enemy's defensive position. He creates a large ice wall in front of his opponent. He punched the ice wall hard. Just like that, pieces of ice flew out. He pushed towards the opposing defense team. The opposing team immediately dodged instead of defending, and it created a premise for his father to catch him and send him off. The defense is gone. He threw it hard towards the opposing team's goal, and the initial result is 1-0. After that phase, the result was 0 for the Igo Night students. They focused all their attention on Lewin, and Father-Son and his teammates took advantage of the weakened defense and attacked that hole. But even if you pay attention to Lewin, you still can't stop him. The whole audience couldn't believe Lewin's tremendous power. Even the opposing team had to surrender. The final result is 11-0. The winner is Ignite Academy. The losing opponent team was filled with admiration and recognition of Lewin's strength. Everyone at the Irish Academy celebrates their victory. Professor Hideo called Lewin. The professor came in to inform him about his appointment with the King of Hell. He went near Lewin. He put his hand on his shoulder to calm him down and announced that tonight at 7 o'clock, the King of Hell is looking forward to this meeting. He was planning something. At the King of Hell's castle, Lewin walks forward confidently and fearlessly. You immediately met the principal who was waiting for you there. He told you to come inside. He led him into the king's room. The King of Hell welcomed him enthusiastically. Lewin looked towards the direction of the King of Hell. Trang realized there was something strange about the King of Hell's magic. He wondered if he was also a dragon. Lewin's face was full of tension. He is the ultimate magician who is about to reach the threshold of being half human, half dragon. The dishes were prepared very fully. He said, you probably don't know we haven't met yet. At that time I saw you from afar. It's been 5 years since I built this, and at that time I was looking for a successor. I used to be on that list, but it seems like things are different now. Now let's get straight to the point. He asked if you could tell me what happened recently. Lewin realized that in his eyes, he was a mistake, proof that the ultimate magician had also made mistakes. He wanted the male lead to say it himself to prove that he was not wrong. He quickly responded and asked for forgiveness. I can only say one thing on this day. The King of Hell listened curiously. You said no matter how talented I am, my efforts won't be recognized. He got sick when he heard the word effort, so he asked if the two of them were related. Why do they always talk about effort? The principal looked at Lewin and replied, that's also the reason I like this boy. He continued to ask, if so, what have you been trying to do? He replied that you've been focusing on martial arts lately. He wondered what you meant by saying that you overcame your mana disorder by practicing martial arts and thus gained great strength and could even perform magic without needing time to chant spells. You want me to believe this thing? Or is it simply that you used some treasure? I have never heard of such a treasure. The principal agreed with that opinion. I can't find out anything more and he won't cause you any more trouble, but he will still follow you. He thought about it and said he didn't know if my efforts would have any effect on our kids. Lewin smiled confidently and replied, please continue to observe me, sir. Do you have any questions? I wonder if the person the ultimate magician chooses will be any different from you. He became more and more interested in Lewin. The matches go on and on. Shouts and cheers. The principal praised everyone here for being so thoughtful and welcoming. The King of Hell was surprised. Oh, you afraid that I will devour your students? Talented magicians are always welcome, just out of curiosity. The principal replied, yes. Has your curiosity been satisfied? He raised his cup of tea and asked if the teacher was hiding anything from me, but reminded him that it wasn't a secret, so at this point I started to be curious about something else. The principal didn't understand what the King of Hell meant. He said, I heard it too. That brat secretly threatened me. That brat is not afraid at all, while many magicians tremble in fear when standing before me. It was very interesting, he continued. I hope the brat I have my eye on will do something. The audience cheered endlessly after the Dom's victory. His face was cold and expressionless. For him, cheering and cheering didn't help much. A panicked person ran to find the Firefly to announce. He immediately told them everything. I didn't believe it was true and asked him if he was sure. He said, I saw with my own eyes that Lewin representative coming to the King of Hell's tower. He indignantly clenched his fists and wondered, why does the King of Hell not test us but test others? He watched Lewin's match several times. This time, Lewin caused a lot of commotion, but he didn't care that no matter how high Lewin climbed or how much he struggled, he wasn't considered his opponent. In Lewin's eyes, he's just a freak. He immediately thought of the scene of Lewin laughing and chatting happily with the King of Hell. A loud rumbling sound came out. The angry butterfly punched the wall hard. I swear I can never forgive you, Lewin. The only person he recognizes